And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is April 22nd, the 112th day of this new year. Just 253 days remain to the year's over with, and we'll go start a new one. Holidays and observances. April 22nd is globally recognized as Earth Day, celebrated annually to promote environmental protection and awareness. The major historical events include the first massive use of poison gas during World War I in 1915. And the National Jelly Bean Day, celebrated annually in the U.S. Girl Scout Leader Day, Administrative Professionals Day. Well, on that note, let's see what stories we have in the news, because there's always something going on. Well, ships reportedly attacked in key oil routes as tensions escalate after President Trump's ceasefire extension. Iran has fired on 2 ships in the Strait of Hormuz after President Trump extended the ceasefire. The ceasefire is going to continue until Tehran presents a unified proposal or to continue the Pakistan talks. The U.S. is continuing to blockade Iranian ports in the Strait and also in the Arabian Sea throughout the ceasefire. Well, the Iran just doesn't know when to stop, I guess, is the problem. Tokyo theme park worker died after being trapped inside a ride mechanism during a routine maintenance. He was conducting routine maintenance at a Tokyo theme park, became trapped for an extended period inside the mechanism of an attraction ride. The incident occurred at Tokyo Dome City Attractions on the Flying Balloon ride on Tuesday, according to the company. During routine maintenance, one of our employees became trapped inside the ride's gondola mechanism, the company said. Following rescue operations, the employee was transported to a hospital where her death was subsequently confirmed. According to local media outlet NHK World Japan, the worker was identified by police as 24-year-old Kamamura Hina. It took roughly 5 hours for personnel to free her, but she was ultimately pronounced dead at a hospital. Flying balloons reportedly a 12-seat ride where passengers sit in a circle around a central pillar. Seats rotate and rise along the structure to a height of about 30 feet. During the operator's monthly inspection, the seats are elevated, allowing Kamamura and 5 colleagues to access and inspect the ride's mechanism. Victims believed to have been working on a stepladder when the raised seat suddenly fell, trapping her against the central pillar. A Chinese marathon robot falls, breakdances itself to pieces. A lot of folks are keeping a close eye on the state of robotics. It's said to be a very exciting field. On one hand, a lot of folks would like to have a robot around the house so it could fold the laundry and make everybody feel like George Jetson from the Jetsons TV show. On the other hand, all it would need is one bad day or a bad software update to turn on its owners and hold them hostage or steal their credit card info. But that's still quite a ways off. Right now, we're at the make robots compete in marathon phase of development. But not everybody's sticking the landing on this. China's been really big on robotics. One broke the human marathon record in Beijing, and another one malfunctioned in spectacular fashion. Well, we got enough problems without robots going crazy. Charlize Theron blasted Timothy Chalamet, and everything just went dark. There we go. There were reckless remarks said she hoped she ran into him. The Oscar-winning actress, who's 50, took aim at Chalamet over comments he made about ballet and opera, calling his remarks reckless and defending the art forms. She said, "I hope I run into him one day. That was a very reckless comment on an art form, two art forms actually, that we need to lift up constantly because they do have a hard time," she said during a New York Times interview. Theron, who trained in dance before turning to acting, made it clear she sees the issue as bigger than one man's comments, as she turned the moment into a warning about how quickly the industry is changing. But in 10 years, AI is going to be able to do Timothy's job, and it won't be able to replace a person on a stage dancing line. We shouldn't have, shall we say, defecated on other art forms. Drawing on her own background in dance, she underscored what she sees as a brutal, often overlooked discipline. Well, it's interesting to see how that plays out. Well, Michael and Susan Dell surpassed $1 billion in donations backing AI-driven hospital project. Billionaire Michael Dell and his wife Susan have become the first donors to give more than $1 billion to the University of Texas at Austin, funding a massive new medical research campus and hospital system powered by artificial intelligence. The couple's latest investment includes a $750 million gift to help build a UT Dell Medical Center, a planned AI-native hospital expected to open in 2030 as part of more than 300-acre advanced research campus. The university official said the project to integrate research and clinical care and advanced computing to improve early disease detection, personalized treatment, and expand access to care in the rapidly growing Austin region. And we've been there several times. It is growing rapidly, no question about that. Well, everyone's wondering why Kash Patel broadcast his alleged drinking issues to the world despite giving denials. He sued the Atlantic. The lawsuit's already backfired big time. The FBI director just put out a statement announcing the magazine's piece about him. The controversy would have been over in a couple of days. But by filing a $250 million suit against what he calls a defamatory hit piece, he turned it into a top story on cable news, especially MS Now, with constant coverage all day Monday, most of it unfavorable. In other words, he shined a white-hot spotlight on accusations of excessive drinking and disappearance to a vastly larger audience than would have heard about it before then. We'll vigorously defend the Atlantic and our journalists against this merciless lawsuit, according to the magazine. While Patel's free to sue anybody he wants to, there are two main reasons this is a seriously bad idea, according to the experts. As a public figure, he'd have to prove the Atlantic acted with malice, either knowingly publishing something false or showing reckless disregard for whether or not it's true. Atlantic is a liberal magazine, but it has serious reporting chops. Beyond that, Patel would open himself up to discovery, meaning the defendants would have access to all kinds of emails and text and documents, some of which would surely be unflattering. He'd be deposed under oath, and he'd have the same rights, of course. The boundless quest for public figures has been the legal standard since the 1964 Supreme Court ruling. Now, the conservative court could overturn that, of course, but nobody thinks this lawsuit's going to even make it to trial. Atlantic reporter Sarah Fitzpatrick pointed to more than 24 people she interviewed about Patel's conduct, including current and former FBI officials, staff at law enforcement intelligence agencies, hospitality industry workers, members of Congress, political operatives, lobbyists, and former advisors, all of whom, of course, spoke on conditions of anonymity. Well, Virginia redistricting a referendum has come up with some results. Virginia voters approved a redistricting referendum, allowing the General Assembly to temporarily redraw congressional maps ahead of the 2026 midterms. That measure could reshape Virginia's congressional delegation with national implications as both parties battle for control of the House. And Youngkin, former governor, is urging the Virginia Supreme Court to step in after voters approved redistricting referendum. Former Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, called on the state Supreme Court to overturn a redistricting referendum approved by voters. He wrote on X, "Thank you to all the voters who turned out to vote against this egregious power grab. Race is much closer than the left expected because Virginia knows a 10-1 map is not Virginia." And he urged the Virginia Supreme Court to rule against this unconstitutional process or disenfranchise millions of Virginians. Well, there is a power grab underway, mostly orchestrated by the Democrats, but we'll see what comes out of all this. Well, an angel mom has ripped Newsom and the Democrats for a bill to use taxpayer dollars for illegal's defense. She called it insanity. California angel mom Agnes Chibonnet, who lost her son in an illegal alien-involved shooting, is blasting Governor Gavin Newsom and state Democrats over a proposed bill that would use taxpayer dollars to fund legal defense for immigrants facing deportation. She urged the voters to stop this insanity. State lawmakers are considering a proposal that would expand access to taxpayer-funded legal representation for immigrants facing deportation proceedings. And the measure would build on existing state programs by creating a framework to provide attorneys to adults in immigration court, regardless of legal status, with priority given to those in detention. And this comes as California and other sanctuary states across the country are facing increasing pressure and scrutiny from the Trump administration for allegedly prioritizing illegal aliens over U.S. citizens. And it has gotten terribly out of control. Interview with Fox News Digital, Gibonnet, whose son Ronald was shot and killed by an illegal alien, ripped into Governor Newsom and California Democrats over the bill. She claimed it's further proof that they care for illegal immigrants more than they do citizens. She said, "My son was murdered. Not one politician has ever contacted me. Not one politician said, 'I'm so sorry for this previously deported a criminal illegal alien shot and killed your son.' Not one single elected official." Well, Newsom's made it clear to a lot of people that he firmly believes the rights of the undocumented illegal aliens count more than that of citizens. We've got elected officials here in Texas who believe the same thing. Well, common eating habits may trigger premature immune system aging, according to a new study. Eating too much salt's long been linked to high blood pressure. New research suggests it could trick the immune system into prematurely aging the blood vessels. A preclinical study recently published in a journal of the American Heart Association has identified a biological chain reaction that links a salty diet to cardiovascular decay. Scientists at the University of South Alabama observed that mice on a high-salt diet experienced rapid deterioration in their blood vessel function. After just 4 weeks of high-sodium intake, small arteries responsible for regulating blood flow lost their ability to relax, according to a press release. The team found that the cells lining these vessels had entered a state of cellular senescence, a form of premature cellular aging when cells stop dividing and release a mixture of inflammatory signals that can damage surrounding tissue. Yes, so we should all quit eating. Got to stop these problems from happening. Well, Americans are among those injured at a shooting caught on video at a tourist hotspot in Mexico. 6 Americans among those injured Monday when a gunman opened fire at Mexico's Tenochtitlan Pyramids, popular tourist attraction. The gunman, identified by Mexican authorities as Julio Cesar Jasso Ramirez, reportedly visited the pyramids on several occasions to engage in the reconnaissance of a specific location he intended to utilize for his violent attack. 1 Canadian was killed and 13 others were injured. Among the others injured are 6 people from the U.S. and others from Russia, Brazil, the Netherlands, and Canada, according to officials. Law enforcement in the region received initial reports of the shooting at 11:20 a.m. on Monday. National Guard quickly responded, and officials said the gunman took his own life at 11:45. One tour guide who witnessed the shooting told the Associated Press the gunman fired upward. And some people, because they were scared, threw themselves face down on the ground, and the rest of us started to go down, the tour guide said. During a news conference on Tuesday, Mexican officials said they found literature, images, and handwritten manuscripts, all allegedly related to violent events known to have occurred in the U.S. in April 1999 in the gunman's backpack. That referred, of course, to the Columbine High School shooting, April 20th, 1999. Officials said the gunman was carrying 52 live rounds of .38 special caliber ammunition inside a plastic bag, as well as a knife. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum addressed the shooting in a social media post on Monday. She said, "What happened Tuesday at Tenochtitlan deeply pains us. I express my most sincere solidarity with the affected individuals and their families," she said. Yesterday's attack highlights the urgent need to strengthen our security protocols. Well, there's unfortunately, the mass shootings show no sign of abating. Well, House Democrats are demanding that Kash Patel take alcohol tests under penalty of perjury after the Atlantic report. House Democrats are launching an investigation into FBI Director Kash Patel after a bombshell story from the Atlantic alleging he had alarmed colleagues with excessive drinking and erratic behavior. Representative Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, and House Judiciary Democrats are demanding that Patel complete a 10-question test identifying hazardous drinking behaviors under penalty of perjury. These glimpses of your relationship to alcohol be alarming in seeing an FBI agent, and for us to see it in the FBI director himself is shocking and indicative of a public emergency, the lawmakers wrote in a letter to Patel late Tuesday evening. Patel, of course, has denied the allegations in the Atlantic story and said Tuesday he's never been intoxicated on the job. Well, Maury Povich shut down Joy Reid's claim that Senate Democrats don't play politics. Former daytime talk show host Maury Povich laughed at former MSNBC host Joy Reid's suggestion Monday that Senate Democrats play by the rules and don't play politics just like the Republicans do. On the On Par with Maury Povich podcast, Povich remarked that if the Democratic Party were to regain control of the Senate after the 2026 midterm elections, it'd effectively stop any chance of President Trump appointing another Supreme Court justice. Similar to how Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, held up President Barack Obama from appointing a replacement after Justice Antonin Scalia's death in 2016. Reid argued otherwise, insisting Democratic politicians are different from Republicans. Well, Ella Langley celebrates her #1 album, Lakeside, in a bikini, and Mike Vrabel sort of apologizes. Well, a lot of folks are comparing the internet to a jungle, and if you just stumbled into the nightcaps for the first time, you need to pull up a chair, grab an adult beverage, or maybe a Diet Coke. If Joe Kinsey's Screen Caps is your morning coffee and Real America Talk Radio, consider Nightcaps your happy hour. And that's where we talk about the chaos of the day. And there isn't a lot of chaos on the internet, no question about that. Well, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry upstaged by a Bondi Beach sunbather who treated them like they were invisible. Well, the sun was shining for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, an unsuspecting beachgoer. During a surprise trip to Bondi Beach last week, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex drew a crowd of revelers as cameras flashed while they walked in the sand. Despite a massive group of followers cascading down surrounding the royal couple, one beachgoer went viral when she couldn't be bothered to dismiss the UV index for the day. On the last day of their 4-day tour of Australia, Meghan and Harry walked alongside lifeguards and fans to get to the shore, only for one tanning pro to remain on her towel as if the crowd was invisible. The one user called her the absolute queen at Bondi Beach sunbathing. Couldn't be bothered to even look up as Meghan Markle and Prince Harry walked right past her. And they were there with their entire entourage, lifeguards, cameras, and fans. She stayed flat on her towel like they were invisible. Meghan claims she wants to be treated like a normal person. Well, she got what she wanted. Well, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's trip included a visit to the Melbourne Royal Children's Hospital, which Queen Elizabeth II opened in 1963. They met with veterans and panel discussion for a youth mental health organization. They had caught criticism earlier this month for their allegedly private-funded faux royal tour of the country. Yeah, as one of the royal family, of course, Harry's got his hand out for everything that the government of Britain can give him. And, of course, Meghan enjoys every bit of it. Well, former Yale coaches are speaking out against an athletic director to the student newspaper. Disgruntlement continues to leak out of the Yale athletic department. Yale University student newspaper, the Yale Daily News, reported that 8 former university coaches and athletic staff members backed the complaints shared in a letter from former Yale hockey coach Keith Allain to President Maureen McInnes. The letter, which was first reported by Fox News on March 23rd, alleged Yale athletic director Vicky Chun fostered a toxic environment. According to the letter, Vicky Chun's the absolute worst leader anybody had ever seen. Dishonest, self-centered, and inaccessible. Her singular talent seems to be self-promotion. She's created a toxic environment within the department where she's insulated by a cadre of administrators whose main task seems to be silencing any dissent. Well, I've been in organizations like that. They're not fun by any means. Well, the Revolutionary War artifacts have been unearthed at the site of an infamous colonial American heist. Everybody's surprised, they say. And this year of America's 250th anniversary, archaeologists and college students recently discovered artifacts dating back to the American Revolution, including an infamous 18th century robbery. The dig took place in Newtown, Pennsylvania, 30 miles northeast of Philadelphia. Local outlet WFMZ reported. Students from Bucks County Community College worked alongside employees from the Mercer Museum during the excavation. And though it seemed an unassuming plot of land in suburban Pennsylvania, that site was once home to colonial-era town buildings, including the county prison and the courthouse. Excavation that took place from March 23rd to March 28th focused on the area where the Treasury building once stood. The whole area's got quite a lot of history. Well, Sean Hannity, Riley Gaines showed among podcasts joining Fox One's expanded streaming portfolio. Fox One announced a significant expansion of its podcast portfolio on Monday, included 8 series from Fox News Media and Red Seat Ventures, inaugurating a curated offering for the streaming service. Fox Corporation's direct-to-consumer streaming service, Fox One, will add Hang Out with Sean Hannity, Ruthless, The Riley Gaines Show, Planet Tyrus, and The Will Kane Country, among others, to its curated podcast offering. Well, on that note, we're going to turn to our topic for today. And I've got some weird stories for you today. We've been talking about a lot of what I've had described to me as off-the-wall topics. Today, we're going to talk about paranormal creatures that folks have reported seeing. Starting out with the Beast of Bray Road. This story came from the U.S., 1989. In the quiet rural outskirts of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, in the fall of 1989, something primal and terrifying stirred among the stretch of asphalt known as Bray Road. It was a cold October night. A local woman by the name of Lori Indrizzi, driving home under a moonlit sky with her headlights, caught a hulking figure crouched by the side of the road. It appeared to be gnawing on roadkill. As her car got closer, that creature slowly rose to its full height, well over 6 feet tall. Covered in shaggy dark fur with pointed ears on top of its head and glowing yellow eyes. She said they seemed to pierce right through her. Its hands, eerily human-like but tipped with claws, hung at its sides as it stared at her for a long, chilling moment before it turned and loped off into the darkness with an unnatural and almost upright gait. Well, her account was just the first of a number that year. Farmers, teenagers, and commuters began whispering of a beast that looked like a werewolf, but moved with terrifying intelligence. One night, a local boy named Mark Schackelman, exploring the grounds of a nearby defunct convent, reported seeing a muscular wolf-like creature that snarled at him in guttural, almost spoken syllables. It stood on two legs and left behind tracks with long claws and padded toes. Not unlike those of a canine, but a whole lot bigger. Skeptics blamed large dogs or bears or misidentifications. But the creature seemed to defy natural explanation. Well, all that year, reports kept surfacing. Livestock found mutilated, strange howls in the night, sightings of something lurking near the woods, watching with predator eyes. For the people of Elkhorn, the legend of the Beast of Bray Road was not a mere campfire tale. It was a living nightmare, prowling the fields and the forest, a cryptid that brought a cold, primal fear back into the heart of America's heartland. Unfortunately, nobody managed to get or never reported getting a good, solid picture of it. But a number of people did report it, and the descriptions all matched. And the people didn't know each other for the most part. Well, from Bray Road, let's go to Point Pleasant in the U.S. The year is 1966. We're going to talk about Mothman. Well, in the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the air grew heavy with unease in November of '66 when two young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Stephen Mary Mallett, were driving near the abandoned TNT munitions plant late one night. It began as a casual cruise, turned into a waking nightmare when their headlights illuminated a towering winged figure standing near the roadside. Unlike anything they had seen before. Well over 6 feet tall, broad wings folded behind its back, two glowing red eyes that seemed to radiate menace. And, unfortunately for them, the creature didn't flee. Instead, it unfurled its massive wings and took off straight into the air with a terrifying speed, chased their car for several miles, easily keeping pace with them as they hit over 100 miles an hour, trying to get away. They raced back into town, breathless and shaken, reported the incident to local authorities who, while skeptical, noted the genuine terror in their voices. Over the following days, more sightings poured in. Gravediggers saw it perched in trees. Teenagers spotted it near dark roads, and residents described feeling watched by something they couldn't explain. Well, the creature became known as Mothman, a name inspired by the insect-like wings and the monstrous form. It wasn't just the sightings that unsettled the town, not by any means. There were electrical failures, strange phone calls, and poltergeist-like activity began to plague witnesses. Many reported a deep sense of dread preceding their encounters, as if the creature was a harbinger of something catastrophic. That catastrophe struck on December 15, 1967, when the Silver Bridge that connected Point Pleasant to Ohio collapsed during rush hour, killed 46 people. In the aftermath, some began to believe the Mothman hadn't been a monster but a warning, an omen of impending doom. Whether a cryptid, a supernatural being, or a psychological manifestation, Mothman became an enduring legend. Red eyes forever burned into the memory of a town that would never again sleep as peacefully as it once did. Well, we're going to reach back into the past for this next paranormal creature. The year is 1909. Talking about the Jersey Devil. It was January, though, that year. An icy dread gripped the towns and villages of southern New Jersey as a week-long wave of terror swept through the Pine Barrens and beyond, sparked by a flurry of chilling sightings of what had become known as the Jersey Devil. Began on the night of January 16th when a local man in Woodbury claimed to have seen a strange winged creature flying overhead. Its unearthly cries slicing through the air. Within days, dozens of reports flooded in from across the region. Terrified residents described a creature with the body of a kangaroo, the wings of a bat, a long serpent-like neck, cloven hooves, and a forked tail. In Bristol, Pennsylvania, policemen claimed to have fired at it as it screeched and flapped through the early morning sky, seemingly impervious to the bullets. Panic reached fever pitch as mysterious footprints and hoof prints began appearing in the snow. Also on rooftops across frozen rivers, even ending abruptly as if the creature had taken flight mid-stride. Schools closed, factories shut down, and armed mobs formed to hunt the creature, while newspapers from New York to Philadelphia fed the hysteria with sensational headlines and first-hand accounts. Even zoo officials offered rewards for the creature's capture, dead or alive. In Camden, a trolley car was attacked by a flying creature that matched the devil's description. In nearby Haddon Heights, people reported livestock being mutilated and pets vanishing without a trace. Fear clung to every shadowy pine and creaking tree in the region. Parents kept their children indoors, and communities were gripped by collective paranoia. Though the frenzy eventually subsided, with skeptics attributing the chaos to mass hysteria and mistaken identity, the legend of the Jersey Devil, forever etched into local folklore. To this day, the dark, tangled woods of the Pine Barrens still echo with tales of the winged terror that once turned an entire region into a waking nightmare during the unforgettable winter of 1909. And stories of the Jersey Devil actually go back into the 1700s. It's been seen by a lot of folks over the years. Well, let's go again in the U.S. to the year 1974. To what's being called the skunk ape. It was a sweltering summer, 1974. In the dense, humid swamps of Florida's Everglades, it became the setting for a wave of sightings sent chills through the sun-soaked state. Residents began reporting encounters with a foul-smelling, ape-like creature to become known to one and all as skunk ape. Began with a series of late-night incidents near suburban homes on the outskirts of the Everglades, where people described being awakened by strange noises, deep growls, heavy footsteps, and the overwhelming stench of rotting meat and sulfur. One of the most startling reports came from a terrified woman in Dade County who claimed a massive hairy creature over 7 feet tall walked right up to her porch, peered through the window with glowing red eyes before it vanished back into the trees. Across the region, frightened residents reported similar sightings. A large upright creature covered in dark matted fur, moving swiftly through the mangroves and cypress trees with unsettling grace, leaving behind crushed foliage and enormous barefoot tracks deep in the mud. Wildlife officials were flooded with calls, but their investigations yielded no solid evidence. Only strange tufts of hair, claw marks on trees, and a smell that lingered long after the creature was gone. Fear was compounded when several hunters claimed they had glimpsed it stalking deer in the early morning fog, its breath visible in the air, its movements too intelligent to dismiss as a simple animal. Skeptics suggested it was a misidentified bear or even an elaborate hoax. But for those who saw it, and especially those who smelled it, the skunk ape was as real as the oppressive heat that clung to the Everglades. As sightings dwindled, the creature slipped back into the legend, a shadow among the swamps, but the summer of 1974 remained a turning point, remarking Florida as a hotspot for one of America's most pungent and persistent cryptids. Yes, there's been a lot of stories about the skunk ape over the years. Well, from Florida, let's go to Scotland. The Loch Ness Monster. The year is 1933. It was spring. The tranquil waters of Loch Ness, the Scottish Highlands, was shattered by a wave of astonishing sightings that would ignite one of the most enduring legends in cryptozoological history. The surge of the Loch Ness Monster stories began quiet in April, and Alda and John McKay, a local couple driving along the loch's northern shore, spotted something massive thrashing in the waters near the Odura Castle area. They described a creature unlike anything they'd ever seen before. Dark with a long undulating body that created enormous ripples as it moved. The local paper, the Inverness Courier, published their account, and what followed was a frenzy of public fascination and fear. Soon others began to report their own encounters. Fishermen, tourists, and even clergy swore they'd seen something enormous gliding beneath the surface, even rising partially out of the loch before vanishing into the deep. Some described a serpentine neck that curved above the waves. Others saw humps break in the water in rhythmic patterns, suggesting a creature of great size. Sightings surged as crowds gathered along the shorelines with binoculars, cameras, and hope. The mystery deepened in November when a British motorcyclist, Arthur Grant, claimed he had nearly collided with the creature as it crossed the road near the loch, headlights illuminating a long-necked seal-like creature before it slipped into the water. And the very idea that a prehistoric animal might lurk in the vast, murky depths of Loch Ness captured the imagination of a generation. And the first known photograph taken by Hugh Gray showed a blurry, serpentine form slithering through the loch. By December, the legend had exploded into international headlines, turning the loch into a magnet for scientists and thrill seekers and skeptics alike. Though many photos and sightings are later questioned or debunked, the 1933 surge created a global phenomenon, forever transforming the Loch Ness from a quiet highland lake into the epicenter of one of the world's most tantalizing unsolved mysteries, a place where the line between myth and reality blurred with each ripple in the water. Well, from Loch Ness in Scotland, let's go to Puerto Rico. The year's 1995. We're going to talk about the Chupacabra attacks. And that summer, a wave of fear swept across the rural towns of Puerto Rico as reports of a strange, bloodthirsty creature began to surface. An unknown predator that would soon be known as the Chupacabra. That nightmare began in the town of Canovanas, where dozens of farmers awoke to find their livestock dead, not torn apart or devoured, but drained of blood with strange puncture wounds in their necks. Goats and chickens and rabbits and even household pets were found lifeless, nearly untouched aside from the surgical precision of the injuries. Even the local veterinarian was baffled. No known predator killed this way. Panic spread quickly as the number of mutilated animals grew into the hundreds. Eyewitnesses soon came forward with chilling descriptions of the creature responsible. Described as a grotesque, bipedal creature about 4 feet tall with leathery gray-green skin, glowing red eyes, long claws, and sharp spines running down its back. Some claimed it moved like a kangaroo, leaping effortlessly across the fences and vanishing into the night. One woman, Madeline Tolentino, gave a detailed account of seeing the creature outside her window, staring at her with an intelligence that felt disturbingly human. The story became the centerpiece of the media frenzy that followed, with news outlets across Latin America and the United States seizing on the mystery. Government officials launched investigations, but could offer no explanation beyond speculation. Some blamed secret genetic experiments, others blamed extraterrestrials. Meanwhile, frightened communities began organizing night patrols armed with flashlights and shotguns, desperate to protect what little livestock they had left. As the attacks continued through the summer and into the fall, the Chupacabra became more than just a legend. It was a symbol of helpless terror, something ancient or unnatural prowling just beyond the reach of light. Though skeptics dismissed it as mass hysteria or misidentified wildlife, the wounds, the fear, and the stories remained. The year 1995 marked the birth of a modern myth, and from that moment on, the name Chupacabra would forever evoke images of shadows moving through the tropics, leaving behind silence and bloodless bodies and unanswered questions. Well, from Puerto Rico, let's go to the UK. The year's 1976. This creature is called the Owl Man of Cornwall. In the quiet village of Monaghan, nestled along the rugged coastline of Cornwall, in England, the summer of '76 brought with it an eerie tale that would forever mark the ancient woods surrounding the old Monaghan church. Tale of a terrifyingly winged creature that would become known as the Owl Man. Began in April of that year when 2 young girls, June and Vicky Melling, were on holiday with their parents and decided to explore the wooded area near the church. And what they saw would haunt them for life. Perched high among the trees was a massive humanoid figure covered in gray feathers, had huge wings and talon-like claws gripping the branch. But it was the creature's face that actually left them paralyzed. Round, expressionless, and dominated by 2 glowing red eyes that stared down at him with an unnatural intelligence. Well, the girls fled in terror, and their father, deeply disturbed by their panic, cut the vacation short and went back home. In the months that followed, more sightings trickled in from local youths and campers, each describing the same winged owl-like humanoid with a almost mechanical flutter to its flight and an uncanny silence to its movements. Researcher Tony Doc Shields took a keen interest recording witness accounts and trying to capture evidence of the creature's presence. Some believed it was a cryptid, others a supernatural entity tied to the church grounds, possibly connected to the ancient pagan ritual or folklore that lingered in the area's deep past. Animals were reportedly found mutilated nearby. Strange symbols were discovered carved into trees, and an oppressive sense of being watched settled over the woods during dusk. Though skeptics dismissed it as a shared hallucination, a local legend spun out of control. Those who did encounter the owl man insisted what they saw was real. Something not of this world, a silent predator that vanished as quickly as it appeared. And even decades later, the dense canopy around the Monon Church feels heavy with mystery. For those who believe, the shadow of the owl man still glides silently above the treetops, just waiting to be seen again. Well, from England, let's go back to the U.S. The year's 1987. We're talking about the Dog Man of Michigan. Well, in that fall, the forests and back roads of northern Michigan stirred with whispers of an ancient terror reborn. Chilling reports began to surface of a creature that walked like a man but carried the terrifying features of a canine predator. A creature that had become known as the Michigan Dog Man. Legend had existed for decades in a hushed local folklore, but it was a haunting song aired by a local radio DJ named Steve Cook that reignited the fear. It was intended to be a Halloween hoax. The song told tales about a half-man, half-dog creature spotted every 10 years. But to Cook's shock, the station was soon flooded with calls from people who claimed they had seen the creature. One of the most detailed and disturbing accounts came from a man in Luther, Michigan, who reported encountering the creature while working as a night watchman at a remote lumber yard. He described a towering figure covered in dark fur, standing upright like a man, but with a elongated snout, pointed ears, and the glowing eyes of a wolf. It stared at him from the edge of the woods, unblinking, exuding an intelligence that felt more sinister than animal. The creature then emitted a low gruntal growl and retreated into the shadows with an unnatural swiftness, left behind massive footprints in the damp earth. Over the following weeks, others came forward, hunters and campers and drivers who all claimed to see the same creature stalking among the trees or darting across desolate roads under the pale glow of the moon. Livestock was found mutilated, strange howls echoed through the pines at night, and some spoke of seeing the creature perched on rooftops or lurking just beyond the reach of their headlights. And no skeptics dismissed the stories as mass hysteria or mistaken identity. The consistency of the descriptions and the deep primal fear in the voices of the witnesses told a different story. For a lot of folks in Michigan's remote northern towns, 1987 was just a year of local legend resurfaced. It was the year the Dog Man stepped out of myth and into terrifying reality. A beast that still stalks the wooded trails, half hidden among the trees, watching and waiting. There's still stories about the Dog Man that turn up from time to time. Well, from Michigan, let's go to Alaska. The year's 2002. We're going to talk about the Thunderbird. It took place in a remote wilderness near Tagiak, Alaska, the summer of 2002. Startling encounter shattered the quiet isolation of the land, revived one of the oldest native legends. Sightings of a giant bird so enormous it could blot out the sky. Began with a bush pilot flying a routine route across the sprawling tundra, spotted what he at first mistook for a small aircraft gliding beneath his own. But as he adjusted his position to get a better view, he realized with disbelief it wasn't a plane at all, it was a living creature. A bird with a wingspan he later estimated to be over 14 feet, easily dwarfing the size of any known raptor. Days later, several residents of the small village of Tagiak and nearby Metakotak reported seeing the same thing. A massive bird soaring above the tree line, its wings slicing the air with a slow, deliberate rhythm, casting shadows over buildings and sending animals into a frenzy. Well, the sightings triggered both wonder and fear. Stories of the Thunderbird, an enormous, powerful bird from native Alaskan and Pacific Northwest mythology, began circulating once again. Village elders spoke of how the Thunderbird is what's believed to be a spiritual force capable of creating thunder with the beating of its wings and calling down lightning when angered. 2002 encounter reawakened those tales as more eyewitnesses described a bird with dark plumage, a hooked beak, and a prehistoric look that reminded some of the pterosaur rather than any modern species. Skeptics blame misidentified eagles or tricks of distance, but the sheer number of credible independent witnesses, including experienced outdoorsmen and pilots, gave the legend renewed strength. Some even searched the skies with binoculars and cameras, hoping to glimpse the giant for themselves, but the bird, like a phantom of the clouds, vanished as quickly as it appeared. That brief period in 2002 became a haunting chapter in Alaska's long history of natural mysteries. A reminder that in the vast, untouched wilderness of the north, ancient forces may still soar silently above, hidden in the gray mist between myth and reality. Well, from Alaska, let's go down to South Carolina and talk about the lizard man of Scape Swamp. The year is 1988. The quiet town of Bishopville, South Carolina, was thrust into a storm of fear and fascination when a teenager named Christopher Davis claimed to have encountered a terrifying creature at the edge of Scape Swamp. This creature became infamously known as the Lizard Man. It's around 2 a.m. when Davis, driving home after a late shift, stopped at a desolate country road to fix a flat tire. As he finished and about to get back into his car, he heard a flush from the dense foliage nearby. And what came out would haunt him forever. A towering figure, 7 feet tall, covered in green, scaly skin that glistened in the moonlight. It had glowing red eyes and long, clawed fingers. It charged toward him on 2 legs, and in panic he jumped into his car and floored it, sped off. Hearing the thud of the creature's hands slamming into his trunk as it tried to catch him. Well, later investigation showed the car had deep scratches and damage consistent with his story. When news of the sighting spread rapidly, and soon other residents began reporting strange occurrences. Vehicles were found clawed and battered, and livestock disappeared. Eerie noises echoed from the swamp at night. Law enforcement launched an investigation, casting searchlights into the murky waters and the thick brush. But the creature, unfortunately, proved elusive. Descriptions remained consistent: reptilian, bipedal, the incredible strength and speed. While skeptics dismissed the reports as hoaxes or misidentified wildlife, the raw fear and witnesses' voices told another story. Local lore began to mix with the frenzy, some suggesting the creature was an ancient inhabitant of the swamp, disturbed by nearby road work. The media descended on Bishopville, turning it into a national curiosity. Locals kept their eyes on the tree line, locking their doors at night. Those sightings faded on the years that followed. The legend of the Lizard Man never truly vanished. Scape Swamp remained thick with mystery. For those who believed, something still lurks in the shadows, waiting for another chance to emerge from the murky depths. Also in the U.S., 1977, the peaceful town of Dover, Massachusetts, had their own sightings. It became known as the Dover Demon. And Dover became the center of the strange, unsettling mystery that would go on to puzzle researchers and haunt witnesses for decades. Chilling encounter was what became known as the Dover Demon. On the night of April 21st, 1977, 17-year-old Bill Bartlett was driving along Farm Street with 2 friends when its headlights illuminated a bizarre figure standing on top of a low stone wall. It wasn't a person or any animal he could recognize. It was small, childlike in size, with a disproportionately large melon-shaped head, glowing orange eyes, and long spindly fingers that wrapped around the rocks as it balanced awkwardly. Its skin appeared hairless and pale, almost sandpaper-like. Had no visible mouth, nose, or ears. Bill watched it for only a few seconds, but that image was burned into his memory. Later sketched the creature, writing beneath the drawing, "I swear on a stack of Bibles that I saw this creature." Just a few hours later, 15-year-old named John Baxter reported a similar sighting while walking home through the wooded area near Miller Hill Road. Thought he saw a small figure approaching and assumed it was somebody he knew. But as he got closer, he realized it wasn't human. The creature backed away, moved toward a gully, and stood near a tree, eerily silent. The next night, another teenager, Abby Brahman, saw a near identical creature crouched by the side of a Springdale Avenue, its glowing eyes fixed on her as she passed. All three accounts described the same thing, each witness having no connection to the others, no credible motive to fabricate such a strange story. Local police were baffled, and although no physical evidence was found, the consistent independent testimony stirred widespread curiosity and fear. Some speculated it was an alien, others believed it might be a mutated animal and an interdimensional being. Well, the Dover demon was never seen again after that brief, surreal 48-hour window, but the mystery it left behind and has endured, casting a strange shadow over the town and leaving behind the unnerving thought that for 2 nights in 1977, something truly inexplicable walked the back roads of Dover. Well, from Dover, Massachusetts, let's go to Flatwoods, West Virginia. The year's 1952. And the Flatwoods monster was out and about. The evening of September 12, 1952 was a night to be remembered. In the quiet town of Flatwoods, a group of local boys reported something strange streaking across the sky. A fiery object, trailing smoke that appeared to crash into the hills near the Bailey Fisher farm. Well, drawn by curiosity and alarm, the boys gathered a small group that included a few adults and hiked up the hill in the direction of the crash. What they expected to find was maybe a meteor or burning debris, but what they encountered was something far more terrifying. As they approached the top of the hill under the fading twilight, a pungent metallic odor filled the air. A thick mist clung to the trees. And then near a large oak, they saw it. An enormous figure standing at least 10 feet tall. Spade-shaped head, glowing red eyes, dark metallic body that shimmered like armor in the dim light. Face seemed to glow from within. It emitted a hissing noise as it hovered or glided toward him. The creature's long, claw-like arms hung motionless, and its body appeared mechanical or armored, not merely or entirely organic. The witnesses, frozen in place by shock and fear, suddenly broke into a panic run as the creature let out a high-pitched shriek and began to move. Some vomited from the overwhelming stench and the fear. Others had burning eyes and skin irritation for days afterwards. Authorities who investigated found scorched ground and an odd residue in the trees, but no conclusive evidence of what had happened. The U.S. military briefly looked into the case, officially attributing the sightings to hysteria and misidentified natural phenomena. But the people of Flatwoods knew what they had seen. They knew it wasn't a weather balloon or an owl in a tree. The incident became one of the earliest, most chilling close encounters in American UFO lore. And to this day, the legend of the Flatwoods monster looms large in West Virginia folklore. A grim reminder that sometime when the fire falls from the sky, something else may follow. Well, from West Virginia, let's turn to the quiet city of Fresno, California. The year's 2007. Fresno became the unlikely epicenter of one of the strangest cryptid sightings ever captured on video. We're talking about the Fresno night crawler, an eerie, silent incident that would leave viewers worldwide puzzled and unsettled. Began when a local homeowner, plagued by repeated disturbances in his front yard, set up a security camera to uncover the source of the late-night activity. What that footage revealed was unlike anything seen before. 2 tall, pale, thin-legged entities gliding across the lawn in an almost spectral fashion. Each figure appeared to consist of almost entirely of long legs with no visible arms or torso, and small heads perched on top of their narrow forms. They moved slowly and fluidly, their gait smooth and unnatural as if they were weightless or floating just above the ground. And there was no sound at all, no disturbance to the grass, no indication of how such figures could physically exist. The footage spread quickly after being shared with local news, drawing attention from paranormal investigators and internet communities who dubbed the beings the Fresno Nightcrawlers. Skeptics searched for explanations, puppetry, CGI, or even altered footage. But experts who analyzed the video found no signs of tampering. Adding to the mystery were similar sightings and supposed Native American legends that spoke about tall, thin beings that acted as guardians of the land, silently wandering the earth. Later videos from different locations, including Yosemite National Park, showed creatures with the same bizarre features, suggesting the Fresno footage wasn't an isolated incident. But nobody ever provided a definitive answer. Unlike traditional cryptids tied to ancient myths or remote wilderness, the night crawlers were something new, alien, dreamlike, and almost minimalist in their mystery. 2007 sightings left behind no tracks, no sound, no physical evidence. Just a haunting video that still captivates and unnerves those who watch it, making the Fresno night crawlers one of the most enigmatic and otherworldly cryptids ever recorded on film. Well, from there, let's go to Loveland, Ohio. Talk about the Loveland Frogman. It was March 3rd, 1972. Otherwise quiet town of Loveland, Ohio became the setting for one of the most bizarre and enduring cryptid encounters in American folklore. Sighting of what would become known as the Loveland Frogman. Just past 1 in, when police officer Ray Shockey, patrolling a dark stretch of Riverside Drive near the Little Miami River, as his headlights cut through the misty night, he caught sight of a strange creature crouched alongside the road. Thinking it might be an injured animal, he slowed down, only to watch in disbelief as the creature stood upright on 2 legs and scurried into the embankment, disappearing into the shadows. What he described was deeply unsettling. A humanoid figure about 3 to 4 feet tall, weatherly, frog-like skin, muscular limbs, and a face more amphibian than human. Its eyes glowed in the darkness. Its movements were quick and eerily smooth. Skeptical but shaken, he filed a report which might have been dismissed if it hadn't been for what happened just 2 weeks later. Another Loveland police officer, Mark Matthews, encountered a creature under similar circumstances. This time he fired at it with a service weapon as it attempted to flee. And although the creature disappeared into the night, Matthews stood by his account for years. Rumors swirled throughout the town, stories of humanoid amphibians lurking near the water, watching from the shadows. Some residents whispered about the strange tracks found near the riverbanks, glimpsed in flashlights, and underground tunnel systems stretching beneath the area. While skeptics later claimed the sightings were misidentified iguanas or elaborate hoaxes, the officers' credibility and consistency in their testimony kept the stories alive. Loveland Frogman was more than just a tale. It was a movement and a moment when the veil between the ordinary and the inexplicable briefly lifted, leaving behind a lingering sense that something unclassified might still inhabit the dark, white waterways of rural Ohio. Well, for our last one for tonight, we have the Black Shuck Storm Church attack. Happened in 1577 in the UK. Stormy morning of August 4th, 1577, the parishioners of Holy Trinity Church in Blythburgh, Suffolk, gathered for worship as thunder rumbled across the sky and rain lashed against the ancient stone walls. Service only just begun when a definitive and deafening clap of thunder erupted above, shaking the very foundations of the church. Suddenly, through the roar of the storm and the flashes of lightning, a monstrous black hound burst through the church doors, its eyes glowing like embers, its matted fur slick with rain. Witnesses later described the creature as larger than any earthly dog, spectral and demonic in presence, and moving with terrifying speed and snarling as it bounded down the nave. And chaos, of course, erupted. People screamed and pews were overturned. The air was said to crackle with the scent of sulfur. The creature leapt among the worshippers, clawing and biting with unnatural fury. 2 parishioners fell dead instantly, reportedly struck down by some unseen force, while the third was left badly burned. The creature then turned and vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving behind scorch marks on the church's wooden doors. Marks that can still be seen to this day, carved deep into the ancient timber like a grim signature. At nearly the same time, Black Shuck, as the beast would become known, was also said to have appeared at St. Mary's Church in Bungay, 10 miles away, during another violent storm where it similarly struck down congregants before vanishing into thin air. Locals believe it was the devil's hound, a harbinger of death and destruction summoned by the storm itself. For generations, the tale of Black Shuck rampaged through the churches of Suffolk was passed down as a warning, a reminder that even sacred ground can be torn open by something dark and ancient and unforgiving. And whether it was a spectral omen, a trick of the lighting, or something far more sinister, the memory of that storm-charged attack in 1577 does endure, etched into history and into the scarred wood of Blythburgh's storm-beaten doors. Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow, and once again, we'll be talking about more stories of the strange and unusual. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.